Here now, Gordon Chang, author of the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, great to see you as always. Good evening.
Good evening, Jackie.
Even the WHO is saying that we need further investigation. We've got to dig deeper. We've got to have access to the lab. And China is saying absolutely not. I know you're not shocked by this, but how far does this standoff go?
Well, this standoff will go for a very long time because China can prevent the World Health Organization or it can prevent anybody else from entering Chinese soil. But we also know that the Chinese people have been talking about this, and Beijing, as powerful as it is, can't prevent them. So I think that we're going to find that the nature of this struggle will change, and it's the Chinese people who will change it for us.
Well, that's interesting. What insight do you have on what's going on the ground in China?
Well, we know that a number of virologists have said that there was a weapons program in these labs, and it was not just the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is, of course, the suspected source of SARS-CoV-2, the pathogen that causes COVID-19, but that this biological weapons program was in other labs across China. So really right now, there's a lot of people talking about this. None of it's been confirmed. But the most important thing, Jackie, is we don't need to get more insight into this. We need to start imposing costs on China right away. And the reason is that we have to establish deterrence, because this is not the last disease that will come from China.
Okay, but this is not an administration that's going to impose sanctions on China for this?
No, it doesn't want to. It did not even want to look at the origins of COVID-19.
Yeah, it won't even acknowledge it. Thank you.
Reporting. Yeah, I mean, they did not want to look at this because they actually spiked the State Department investigation into the origins. But it was the American people, when they learned about the end of that investigation, that were just outraged. It was not only political elites, it was Americans across our land that were upset. And that forced President Biden on May 26 to announce that investigation into the origins of COVID-19.
It's interesting because you talk about people on the ground, some of the scientists themselves. The problem is that the dialogue, the discourse can happen, but it's going to happen in a communist country very quietly. And unfortunately, because the regime is authoritarian, people are scared to speak out.
Well, they're very scared to speak out, and that's why many of them are not. But, some Chinese people are extremely brave. Some of them have come to the United States, actually defected, to talk about this. And that's the way we're going to learn about this. It'll take a little bit of time, but people will talk about it because this program was massive across China. And not everyone is going to be intimidated because at some point, people's humanity overtakes them and they've got to tell their story. And that's how we'll hear it.
Yeah, well, sanctions would be one way to do it. The other way that we could do it is for corporations, for example, in this country, businesses that do business with China, to essentially to pull back a little bit, to look at this relationship and say, even if the government isn't going to do, say, what President Trump did, maybe it's time for us to do something.
Well, yes, and it is political pressure that will force companies to take a less pro-Beijing attitude towards it. But also, this is really the primary responsibility of the guy who sits in the Oval Office. And that's where pressure will be. We have elections all the time. The next one's coming up next year. And that could have a big effect on the way President Biden heads out after the midterms and the way that he looks at China. Because he can read what the American people are thinking about this, and he can see that there's a lot of discontent about the way the government is handling this.
Yeah, there is. And all of those people would say, Gordon, if you have to leave it to the guy in the Oval to do something about this, I wouldn't hold my breath. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jackie.